Disclaimer. I am a law student, and the legal information provided is not legal advice. For that, please hire an attorney. So this is gonna be it's gonna be a journey. We're going on a journey to the center of the. Oh, what was the video that actually, I don't know. Would we define Rose of Dawn as a turf? We're going on the journey to the center of Rose's logic. All right.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna find out, right?
Yeah, for real. So for people who are watching, the video is called "Who Has a Cervix? Trans Stupid." That is it's an interesting title there. I feel like
her series is called Trans Stupid, I think, right?
Yeah, no, like her. Yeah, I know that she has a series called Trans Stupid, but I mean, like, the question is who has a cervix. Well, I mean, it's pretty easy, right? It's AFAB, like pretty much anyone AFAB, right? So that would be like non-binary people who are AFAB, trans guys, and women primarily.
Yeah, pretty much anybody who hasn't had it removed.
Yeah, I think we just answered it. All right, awesome. Segment's done. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, but obviously it's going to be a lot more than that. So, God, let's strap in. We're going to get through this, all right? I believe in us. I believe in us.
We can do it.
We got it. All right, let's do this. I'm also going to speed it up slightly.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Trans Stupid.
Hey, it's a new background. That's interesting. Sorry, just like casual observation, not actually relevant to the video.
The show where I take a look at the wonderful, magical, fantastical world of LGBTQIA+++++ news, because stupid.
Plus, yes, because everyone, it's the funniest joke, right? This is the peak of far right humor.
This is a good faith approach.
Oh yeah, no, completely, 100%, right? You know, because it's being inclusive is a bad thing and it's laughable. That's the joke, people. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
They finally have more than one joke.
Yes, they do. They have actually two jokes. In fact, it's this and it's this and the helicopter joke. Although they could be kind of one and the same if she's like subtly implying that the other genders are just basically equivalent to attack helicopters. I don't know, but I'll let you as the audience decide.
Stupidity is intersectional. So you're probably noticing there's a little bit of a different setup this week. Well, just to give you a little bit of an update on where my life currently is, I've now moved out of the hellscape that is central London. I'm currently hiding away in...
I actually don't blame her for that. I don't know. I can't imagine living in London. I can't imagine unironically being in Britain. Ugh.
Yeah, living on Turf Island.
I know, right? Yeah, no, so I actually don't blame her for that.
North Wales for the next couple of weeks before getting my own place again. So just for the time being, get used to this backdrop, get used to this nice big comfy chair as we just take a bit of a chill and go over what you are all here to listen about, which is, of course, the insanity that has been going on in 2020 with the fantastic world of intersectional identity politics.
Wow, that's a lot. Kowalski, analysis, explain.
And the first story I'm going to talk about this week, I'm going to pose you all a question. What do you call an individual with a cervix?
Someone with a cervix? I think that's
Big
it.
brain questions.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? You just call them an individual with a cervix. Sometimes it can be someone who's non-binary. Sometimes it can be someone who's a binary man or a binary woman. But that's it. Amazing. This is it. I don't even have to bring out this is like such simple. This is so simple that I don't even need to bring out like a research document. Like, yeah, I don't know, but this is a 20-minute video, so I assume that Rose is gonna try and make some kind of an argument here.
I wonder how repetitive she's gonna be, you know?
Oh yeah, I know. If it gets to be too much, then I'm just gonna end the segment because like I can only listen. I have so many spoons for today, and like the first two videos have already taken a decent bit out of me because like a lot of people say a lot of very wrong things in very quick succession, and it takes a decent amount of effort to debunk all of it, right? So it depends on how many spoons I have, but we'll see.
That like I know my viewers are probably sitting back thinking, you know, I know this, but be careful because if you say anything, well, you're probably transphobic. This, of course, relates.
If you say anything, you're probably transphobic. The translation of that is if you say that it's not non-binary people or if it's not trans men, then you're transphobic, right? That's actually the translation of what she's getting at, or my very educated guess. If I get that right, I want to see so many fucking Riley gods in chat because I'm fucking calling it right now. It's not if
I'm
you
calling
say
something too. I want to call that she's gonna say it's erasing women.
oh shit. That is a good prediction. That's a good prediction. All right, we got some predictions down for erasing women and saying something which is actually transphobic. All right. We got some bets down. Let's see where we're heading.
Relates to a CNN tweet posted a few days ago where they mentioned individuals with a cervix are now recommended to start cervical cancer screenings at 25 and continue through to age 65 with HPV
That seems pretty good. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this.
testing every 5 years as the preferred method of testing, according to a new guideline released by the American Cancer Society. So,
nice. Good job, American Cancer Society.
note the way they started that, individuals with a cervix. And naturally, CNN is not the only news outlet, or indeed the only kind of source out there that now refers...
Unironically referring to J.K. Rowling.
10 out of 10 sources.
I know, right? Amazing.
To people with female anatomy just as being individuals with insert issue here. In fact, you've seen a lot of discussions coming from medical bodies, coming from politicians, coming from basically public figures.
And also, like, the scientific community. The medical and scientific community. Yeah. I mean, who was the organization that she cited first? The American Cancer Society?
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing. That's a really political group there. A really, very, very polarizing, very, very unscientific association that you're trying to say that you're trying to imply has some sort of political motive there. Amazing.
Acting as though we now have a whole new language that nobody else has really opted into except for the hyper-woke. This is a huge issue, and naturally CNN received a ton of backlash, including recent woke crusader Piers Morgan going back to his old usual self.
Wait. So hold on. I want to explore the argument, all right? Because I think that's her first argument, right? She's basically making the argument that we are that very hyper woke organizations, heavy quotations, are forcing society to opt into a language change which society or people did not consent to. I think that's effectively the argument that she just represented, right? And
yeah, that sounds about right to me.
Yeah, and that just is kind of silly, right? Like, literally, the only reason, the main reason that they use that is probably because, if you just say women should get, checked for cervical cancer, then you're going to be leaving out a fucking lot of people. Non-binary people and trans men who probably also are dealing with that stuff. It's literally just medical professionals trying to make sure that they're actually prescribing medical care to the people who need it. That's literally all it is. And trying to impose this image of the hyper woke police trying to tell you what to believe is just so nonsensical. I don't know.
And there's a really fascinating approach to it where it's there's this illusion to things being done without consent that's I don't know about that.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I mean, basically, it's the position is, oh, you're changing the way that language is functioning in larger society, especially in academic circles. Well, I, as someone who, likes to refer to people with cervixes as women and misgender people, well, I didn't consent to that. I didn't consent to this scientific advancement. And it's just it doesn't really matter whether or not you consented to it. That's what we have to say in order to be medically accurate, right? I don't really care if you get offended that we're saying individuals with a cervix so that we include everyone who could be possibly affected or possibly everyone that this information will be possibly relevant to. But also, if you're mad about it, it doesn't really matter because doctors aren't really focused on trying to adhere or trying to tailor their medical practices to what individuals think they should be allowed to say or do or refer to other people as, right? It's kind of just ridiculous, It's not like every time there's a new medical advancement in any regard, in any other, part of the scientific community, the first thing that people do is figure out, oh shit, well, what are we going to call this? We want to make sure that we don't offend anyone else, offend anyone out in the public. We want to make sure that we take into account. No, they just call it what it is, right? They just act descriptively. They don't want to get public input on it. The public will usually name it something, but they're just trying to act descriptively, right? And saying people with cervixes is just as descriptive as you can get. Because if you say women, you're just being wrong.
God, why are they bringing all this identity politics into the medical science community?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, let's go on.
The reason why this is such a problem is because over time you'll see language progress, and that is often the argument you will hear from trans activists, or indeed the woke left,
the woke left coming in and policing everyone's language. Careful, I'm trying to remember what Tim Pool said, that the woke police is gonna come into your house and arrest you for misgendering someone. You better be careful. The woke police are gonna fucking get you. Yeah, no, this is kind of laughable, right? Yeah, no, I mean, like, we're just advancing like what is accurate as far as like language is concerned. That's it.
that words do change their meanings, and that is naturally true. But that's not really what's happening here. Instead, we're seeing more that words are changing their meanings based on a committee that nobody really has any kind of input into. And then as soon as these new meanings are put out into the public sphere, speaking out against it can't get you deemed a transphobe. Or maybe
the words are being changed. I think this is literally the entirety of the argument. It's just that the word was changed without people's consent, right? Because, yeah, you know, doctors are definitely looking for the input of, like, transphobes and people who would otherwise misgender people on whether or not they are going to make, like, medical statements. That's basically the entirety of the argument right now, is what I've gotten. I don't know.
I'm just really interested to see how this argument doesn't circle back around to Rose is not a woman. Like, by her own, the end of her own logic train is that she's not a woman.
Oh, shit. No, I think that you're onto something there. Well, I'm trying to remember if she acknowledges. I think that she draws a distinction between, like, what it means to be a woman and the trans woman, right? I think that she draws that distinction. So I think that's kind of where her logic would lead, would be like, if you asked her if she was a woman, she would say, no, I'm not a woman, I'm a trans woman. Which means yeah, exactly. Like, it's very, it's not exactly great. And in this sense, I feel kind of...
leaves the space out, too.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad for her in that respect, but, you know, hey, I can only lead someone to water, I can't make them drink.
Even led to you being cancelled, so to speak. And that is a massive problem. If you want people to understand a new meaning for a word, you need to allow that meaning to progress naturally and to evolve.
Also, I just want to talk about this argument. So basically, she's trying to frame, like, the idea. Like, she's trying to frame it as if, you know, if you don't, like, if you have some trouble adhering to, like, modern advancement in words, then, like, the woke left is gonna come and cancel your ass into the dirt. Let's be clear, like, the only people who, like, actually are, like, in any degree of the term, like, canceled online are usually people who will go out of their way in this regard to, like, overtly try to misgender trans people, right? Or spread, like, overtly and intentionally transphobic ideas, right? Like, that's usually what it is, right? The hypothetical situation where it's just someone who, like, makes an honest mistake in the course of learning about something, like, this is just a straw man. This isn't actually something that happens, and it just makes them look like a victim. Like, that she wants to be such a goddamn victim. All of them want to be such goddamn victims. Which is always I don't know, like, I see this among, like, people like her, people like Ariel, like, pretty much every single far-right creator nowadays. They always try to assume, like, this position that the giant woke indomitable left that has control of the entire media is constantly just suppressing the innocent little free speech of these small innocent little bystanders who just want to spread transphobic ideas. You know, they're just so innocent.
Yeah, the enemy is simultaneously strong and weak. Weird.
I know, right? Amazing. It's not like that was employed by any, you know, like, really fascist or far-right organizations historically. Sips tea. By the way, how did the Nazis refer to the Jews before they put them in concentration camps? It's a very, I don't know. We're just asking questions here. We're just doing the same thing as Rose, just asking questions, you know. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. It's very interesting seeing, like, the parallel between, like, fascist thinking and the thinking that she's trying to employ here. Just an interesting thing to think about.
Naturally. Just to kind of add a little bit of an explainer on this, a lot of people hear these kinds of languages and always assume, well, it's trans women who are pushing this because they don't want to be left out of the term woman. That's not really what's happened here. Instead, what we've seen is that this relates to trans men or female non-binary people, aka...
I mean, yeah. Congrats. You've hit the nail on the head.
She figured it out.
I know, right? She's figured it out. This is going to turn into the exact same as the previous segment where they actually unironically, like, logic their way to the correct answer. Let's see where she goes from here.
AKA people who are biologically female and therefore have a cervix.
I mean, I don't agree necessarily with that language because, as we've already talked about, like when we try to use terms like biological male and biological female, it's not exactly scientific because like since we exist on the spectrum, like a bimodal distribution, again, I'm not going to go over it again because I've already gone over it previously on stream. I'm showing my research doc for reference, and it has all the appropriate citations and quotes to be able to back this up. Essentially, like when you have sex that exists on a spectrum and you try to impose binary categories onto it, like biological male or biological female, like the decision of where those things are going to start is going to be completely arbitrary, right? Or, you know, arbitrarily determined by society. This isn't like the main point of her argument, so I'm not going to get too beat up into. I'm not going to like beat her down too much into it, but I mean, like, yeah, you know, we're talking about people with cervixes, so saying individuals with the cervix is descriptively correct.
And it's always pointed at this is the more inclusive way of talking about this, but I'm sure.
I mean, it's the more professional way of talking about it. Again, this is literally medical advice. It's literally medical advice. If you don't say this as like a large cancer, like as a cancer organization, you end up running the risk where people who could have cancer don't actually end up following the advice because they might think that there's a distinction between themselves and the people who they're talking about. Like it's literally trying to, like she's being such a. Is it appropriate to say that she's being such an SJW right now, telling doctors what they can and can't say because, you know, it offends like her personal sense of how the world should operate? I feel like that's not entirely a stretch because like literally she's just trying to tell doctors what they should say, even if it's in contradiction to like what the modern scientific consensus is. That's basically where I think that we're at right now. I'm sorry, we're like 3.5. I keep stopping too much. I will let her talk for as long as she doesn't say something.
It's so hard.
I know, it is really hard. It is really hard.
A lot of trans men, and I'm sure a lot of non-binary people, will understand fundamentally that they are biologically female. They would not be trans, or they wouldn't be non-binary if they...
Oh, shit. All right, she did get to the argument. All right, well then I return to my earlier argument about, you know, the nature of using terms like biological male or biological female. Yeah, so I reference back to that.
They weren't. So they naturally have to understand that. They cannot be so indoctrinated that they refuse to admit it in a private conversation. And
oh, wait a second. Okay, I think I'm beginning to get her argument. Okay, so what she's saying is that by virtue of having a cervix, that makes you biologically a woman.
Yeah,
because
making that conflation.
Yeah, and because you're biologically a woman, then the medical organization has to. Okay, so we're gonna go more in depth into this analysis. Then I think that we kind of have to. I'm gonna read off some consensus real quick. So I don't know. I apologize if this will take a second. I'm gonna try and I'm getting better at talking fast. It's a skill I've been certainly working on. But let's hit through some of the major points real quick. So first, here's a graphic from Scientific American describing the many characteristics which factor into one's sexual identity. This shows the ambiguous and bimodal nature of sex, that sex is not as simple as XX or XY, and that biological sex is on a bimodal distribution, not a direct binary. Here's the graph. Amazing. Link above. Another publication in Scientific American elaborates on the subject. Sex is supposed to be simple, at least at a molecular level. The biological explanations that appear in textbooks amount to XX equals girl and XY equals boy, Venus or Mars, pink or blue. As science looks more closely, however, it becomes increasingly clear that a pair of chromosomes do not always suffice to distinguish boy-girl, either from a standpoint of biological sex or gender. And honestly, everything else here literally says the same thing. It's all available. I don't, like, I've already read this like 3 different times in this stream. It's literally all here. I'm showing it on screen. I have the relevant quotes and citations. The analysis of all of this is that the modern scientific consensus is that binary terms like biological male and biological female are to an extent like scientific fiction of themselves. This is because since biological sex is on a spectrum, when we choose when to label someone as biologically male or biologically female, that's determined by society. There's no like label on women that says you are girl or there's no like label on men that says you are boy, right? Like the total aggregate of traits together is what society takes into account when they determine whether or not someone is a boy or a girl, right? And like our apparent allies, the Paradox Institute, so eloquently argued in the previous segment, when you try to impose binary categories onto a bimodal distribution, you end up with a weird situation where you have people who are more or less of a man or more or less of a woman. And that's just not the case, right? So to say that, like, non-binary people are biologically male or biologically female, whatever they would try to impose, in this case, biologically female, or that trans men are biologically female, that's not really the scientific consensus, right? That's not accurate. And my guess is that's the reason why the American Cancer Society didn't use that language, is because it's not accurate, Rose. And I'm sorry it's not what you want, but In the words of someone who came up with the saying, but who drastically misuses it every time he opens his goddamn mouth. Do I have to say it? God, the meaning is so fucking tainted at this point. You all know what I'm talking about. You all know what I'm talking about. So anyway,
reels over feels. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. God, I don't want to turn. I don't like fucking saying that. But I like the fact that he appropriated. I hate that he appropriated that language, because literally everything that he says, like every time I've covered Ben Shapiro on this channel, he's just been so blatantly wrong. It makes me just it just shocks my conscience. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm sorry that this doesn't fit your worldview, Rose, but it just doesn't. Yeah.
So what we're looking at really is just changing terms and the way in which we speak to appease a very small minority, which ultimately aren't impacted much by this current use of language. Are we really expected to believe that a trans man wouldn't understand his risk of cervical cancer simply because the wording says woman?
I mean, like, it's just more descriptive, right?
I really need to say something right now.
Yeah, go
because
for it.
It's not like, okay, obviously, like, this is, something Cat Black says. It's not like trans people are unaware of their biology. We are aware. That is what makes us trans. It's that goddamn medical institutions are, like, less aware. Like, you have, like, institutions like this, like Cancer Society, cool, making these, like, very correct statements about, like, who needs access to this healthcare. And meanwhile, like, doctors are like, I don't want a trans man in my waiting room freaking out all of the women in here, so Robert Eads died of ovarian cancer. Like, it is not just that, like, oh, we're appeasing this minority of people who need access to this care. It's that people will die.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, that's the real consequence, right? Is that, like, when we're talking about something like what the medical community is using and, like, like how medical professionals are treating people, like, shit matters, right? And especially when we get into these sorts of situations, it doesn't really matter how Rose wants it to go about. You run into those situations like the one where you described, where, like, there are really high stakes, and where these kinds of small distinctions, or distinctions which may seem small to other people, really do matter, right? And I guess that's really the thing that, I don't know, you put it much better than I could. But yeah, so that's the main thing. I don't know, are we ready to go on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I somehow doubt it. I don't think many trans men are going to be sitting back and thinking, well, I'm completely impervious to cervical cancer because I've self-identified out of the risk factor. Like, of course they haven't. And, of course, this can lead into trouble if you decide that actually the term should be woman, as Rosie Duffield, a Labour MP, Labour, not horrible right-wing Tory, but Labour, saying that, well, this is just another word for woman.
I don't know about UK politics, so I don't know what the politics is like over there.
I think Labour Party is the left. I mean, as left as it gets. You know what I mean?
Right. How far? Like, what would be the appropriate translation from, like, U.S. politics? Like, I don't think it would be appropriate to label them as, like, the analogy for, like, Democratic Party, would it?
I mean, I think that's the closest thing.
UK is screwed. Yeah, I do need to look more into, like, UK politics, but okay.
Like the lib left.
The lib left. Okay.
And naturally, she got a lot of flack. She even pointed out that, well, this seems like quite a bit of a communist revolution.
Just this week's tedious communist pile-on? Are you goddamn serious? I firmly believe this. Anyone even remotely close to center will accuse anything left of themselves, like literally anything left of themselves. Actually, screw that. Anyone who is close to center or far right beyond that will accuse anyone to the left of them as being a communist. I stand by that claim. I will die on that hill. Literally, like my understanding of what it means to call someone communist according to, like, modern political standards is literally just anyone left of center, period. And it's just like, this is so goddamn frustrating.
It is so frustrating.
Yeah, especially because, like, I know this is gonna haunt me forever, because, like, when I go into major like, if I want to go into a political career, I know that, like, literally the first two things I'm going to have, like, used as attacks on me are going to be the trans thing, because of course it is, we live in America in 2020, and, like, people are going to accuse me of being a communist, right? Like, those are effectively going to be the very first two things that'll happen. It doesn't even matter what my policies are. It doesn't really matter, like, what kind of platform I run on. Like, those, I will be the communist trans girl. They will use much worse terms that people just tear down, which kind of sucks. I feel like that's pretty shitty, but, that's the world that we live in.
True.
Against her, and she's kind of right. I mean, a lot of the people who are pushing these new definitions are certainly on the left to far left, although being a labor.
I mean, the people who are pushing them are, like, the leading members of the medical and scientific community.
It's not even pushing a definition. Like
Mhm.
Rose is the one who is pushing a definition of the word woman, as
Yeah.
opposed to using the descriptive language like a person with a cervix.
Yeah, I know, right? No, and I think that's actually,
Hypocrisy.
yeah, like I think that actually is like a really good point, right? Like she's trying to orchestrate this definition of what she wants a woman to mean, to basically be like the catch-all term for a person with a cervix, when literally you could just say a person with a cervix, and by virtue of saying that, just automatically be more inclusive of people who the medical advice appropriately relates to, right? Like the only person who's trying to push a new definition of a term here is Rose. Like, well, you know, exactly like what you said. So no, I completely agree.
Labour MP, she is probably a part of the reason why these people have got so much cultural power in the UK as it is. But despite her politics being right on, as some people might say, she still got into a lot of trouble, and I've now found that people are gunning for her to be removed from the party for unspeakable hate.
Oh, see, this is the thing that Rose and similar people always do. Also, great frame to finish off.
Yeah, it's such a good screen.
Yeah, that's a good screen. People can, hey, people, we already have a Blair emote. If we wanna make a Rose emote, this might be a good candidate. I don't know. People can play around with that. But anyway, so the thing about this is that like people always try to, like, it's always just framed as like another reasonable opinion. Listen, she's going to be accused and removed from office or whatever just for voicing her opinion. It's just for speaking her truth. It's just for, but like this kind of rhetoric really kind of flops on its face when you actually read between the lines of what she's saying, because like, yeah, if she's spreading like transphobic views or like views that like we shouldn't have language which is like actually descriptive or actually inclusive of marginalized people, yeah, like that is pretty bad, you know? And especially if she's like not even willing to move on it, if like in the initial instance she just made like an honest mistake, like if she really honestly like is going to like double down on these views, I don't really feel too bad for her, for people like saying that she should be removed from office, you know? But these people, but like Rose and similar people always try to make it up, but like, oh, but she's just trying to voice her opinions, always just trying to voice her truth. Well, like imagine, like the examples I always like to use is like, all right, well imagine if like you have someone who works for you who's an unironic race realist, who thinks that like we should actually like go back to having slavery because like the best way to employ black people is to just have them be slaves because they're biologically inferior to like white people, right? It's just an honest opinion. It's just my honest opinion. Well, yeah, like once you run into those sort of situations, it becomes pretty clear that like it's not just an opinion, right? It's literally race realism. Just like this is literally transphobia, you know? So I don't know. Yeah, exactly. This is, I'm sorry. I realize I talk about such bad topics. Or not such bad topics, such depressing topics. I do need to play more like Witcher or something. I don't know. just to balance out the mood of my streams. But hey, you know, education is power.
I mean, this is the same party that has a massive anti-Semitism problem, but, you know, that pales in comparison to using the word woman. All of this is kind of absurd.
I don't know anything about that history. Wait, so is she talking about the Labor Party?
Yeah, she's talking about labor.
Okay. Oh, hey. Wait, holy shit. Damn. Combo 14. Oh, damn. Can we get a camo in the amazing. We just got like a new emote in the Discord, and it's now my new favorite emote. But yeah, God, what was I going with that? Yeah, I don't know anything about the Labor Party's anti-Semitic problem. So I don't know if she's like citing an actual instance of hypocrisy or whatever.
And if you looked at this from 10 years ago thinking that people would really be arguing about the term woman, then you'd be forgiven for thinking we must be living in clown world. And to be honest, you'd be...
When someone unironically uses clown world in 2020, I feel like that's usually a pretty good indicator that they're spending way too much time on 4chan. I don't know about you, but that's kind of the impression that I get.
Terminally online.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, can we get some Blair clowns in chat just for the irony of that, right? Cuz like I literally only like I've seen this from her and from Blair now. Now I don't know how much time that Blair spends online, but that's the reason that the emote, like literally the emote exists in my server, because Blair unironically like used the clown emote to describe how we're in a clown world or whatever in one of her other videos, right? And the fact that we're only seeing this from more farther right sources probably tells you a decent bit. Also, nice 14 times combo. I don't know. It's just one of those, like, you know, sometimes there are little bits that people can say, like they're little small phrases or words that honestly tell you a lot more about their position than any of the substantive arguments that they make. Just an observation.
Be absolutely right to say that. But a further problem with this kind of narrative is that it kind of comes from an all or nothing response to language, which we've been seeing quite a lot over the last couple of years. For example, the arguments about whether a woman has a cervix, because some women might have a medical condition which means that they don't have that. And by woman, I am referring to biological human females.
Okay, so there's a couple things there. First, I think she's actually just talking about the difference between prescriptive and descriptive language. Should we use the term women to describe all people who have a cervix if not everyone fits in there? Well, no, because if it's not descriptively correct, then we shouldn't use it if what we want is to be descriptively correct. Now, if you want to be prescriptively, well, I mean, there's no prescriptively correct. It's subjective at that point. But if you want to be prescriptive about it, then that's fine to do. But understand that you might have some like biased or bigoted beliefs baked into what you believe a woman is if you define like trans women or non-binary people. Or wait, no. If you define like trans women out of it or do similar things with it, right? Or define people into the category who don't want to be affiliated or aren't affiliated with the category, then you run into some issues, right? But like if we're just trying to be descriptive, then yeah, you know, individuals with cervix is like the most descriptively correct language. And then yeah, when she says like when she defines women to be like adult human females with the cervix or whatever she said, understand that like pursuant to the conversation earlier, that's just wrong. Yep.
And they use this kind of total all or nothing response simply to kind of control that narrative and say, well, because not all women have this or that problem, then you can't say that being a woman is about having that. And that kind of is like saying that the sky isn't blue. What I mean by that is, we all take it for granted that the sky is, of course, blue, but sometimes the sky is red. Sometimes the sky is grey. Sometimes the sky can be all sorts of different colours. So saying that the sky is blue is a false statement because it isn't always blue, despite...
Hold on. Actually, this is interesting. I think that she's kind of walking herself logically into the right conclusion up to the point where she makes the conclusion. Because descriptively, if you look at the sky at a time when it is blue and you say the sky is currently blue, descriptively you are correct. But if you want to make the statement that the sky is blue all the time, or you want to say that the sky is always blue, then you would be descriptively wrong, right? And I think that there's a really good analogy to when we're talking about people with cervixes, right? Because if you want to say, for example, I don't know, person A has a cervix and there's someone who was born with a cervix, then you would be right. And if you want to say that person A is a woman and there's someone who identifies as a woman or was assigned female at birth and they just choose to go along with that, then you would be correct, right? Like that would be a correct statement that would be a correct instance of using they are a woman or person A is a woman, right? But then if you try to take it further to say all people who are born with a cervix are women, well then you would be wrong, because then you would be saying effectively the same thing as in the hypothetical with the sky, that the sky is always blue. And we know that's not true. So I think that Rose's argument actually does more to prove like what is actually correct in terms of this discussion than to prove her own point.
Yeah, it hurt my brain.
Yeah. That was just something I wanted to comment on. But yeah, like this is the same thing as with the Paradox Institute, right? Where a lot of these people will like give a lot of the correct logic, up to the point where they make their conclusion, and then they'll just sashay off into moon logic, right? Like they'll just like go like logically the correct way down the path up to where they make the conclusion, and then they just end up like taking such a leap of logic that just like ends them at some weird, well, I mean, like usually they make the leap to where they want to go, right? But end up sacrificing some logic in the meanwhile, and that makes them wrong. Rip.
The fact that we all know that to be a truth. Or how about the ocean? I mean, is the ocean filled with water? Well, you know, it also has ships in it. It also has fish. It also has coral. It has rocks. It has seals. So you can't just say that the ocean is filled with water. It's the same kind of arguments because...
I mean, that's a little different. I feel like that's a more distinguishable example from like the sky argument. The sky analogy actually is pretty on point for what we're talking about. The ocean, I mean, like that analogy doesn't map on because that's like saying that Like what's like a decent analogy to the human body? I mean, like it's so drastically different. I think I would just distinguish that analogy on the base that like the ocean doesn't map on to the human body. Yeah.
It seems
It's
to be
like
that
a deliberate obfuscation.
Yeah, no, that's essentially my take from it.
Take that as a total statement because there's a lot of other things going on around it, and a lot of people don't quite get on board with that, and they're never going to. Why should they? And this also leads into a recent Twitter argument about 2 + 2 = 5. You know, that famous saying from 1984. Well, it turns out that even saying that could be transphobic because it's denying the existence of trans women.
Wait, what? Hold on. Luxander, are you familiar with this? Is this some bullshit?
I mean, I did recently read 1984. I don't know exactly, like, I hadn't seen this tweet before, so I'm reading it now.
But apparently saying that trans women are women is Orwell's nightmare. And we must guard. Here are some cool thoughts from a trans mathematician. I mean, I don't know what this is getting at. I mean, like, yeah, you know, a lot of people, oh no, 2 + 2. Yeah, what is this? I mean, like, if we want to say, like, my take on this is that, like, right now, Rose is the one who's trying to say that 2 + 2 = 5, right? Like, she keeps on repeatedly over and over providing premises for a conclusion that just are not logically or empirically founded, right? Like, she keeps on either obfuscating or, like, incorrectly interpreting what a hypothetical would mean when you apply it to a particular circumstance, or she's just wrong about the empirical scientific authority on the subject, right? Like, right now, the only person who's trying to say that 2 + 2 = 5 is Rose. Right? And I mean, like,
yeah.
And I mean, like, in that sense, yeah. RGR move on chat can't retweet. Oh yeah. Here's what I'll do. Put it there. But yeah, I mean, like, in this case, I don't know, like, yeah, in some instances where if you say, like, if you follow the analogy to its logical extreme, right? I'm just thinking about it logically, right? Like, for example, if you keep saying things which are objectively wrong, but try to present it as like an empiric authority, or try to present it as like something which people should believe, and it is wrong, and not only wrong, but like harms marginalized people by virtue of the fact that they belong to a marginalized group, then I'm pretty sure that fits the definition of what it means to be transphobic, right? If people want definitions of what it means to be transphobic, see my research doc. I have a whole section on it. But yeah, like, if you keep trying to spread, like, a really good example is race realism. If you keep trying to spread race realism as like an empiric citable idea or like empirically backed idea when it's just like flat on its face wrong, then yeah, you're kind of being a racist bigot because you're spreading racist ideas and trying to pass it off as something which people should believe, right? And I mean, like, similarly, if you try to pass off transphobic ideas as things that people should believe, even if they're blatantly wrong, then yeah, that's transphobic. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily transphobic in and of itself if it's wrong, but like, if you are presented with evidence that overwhelmingly it's wrong, and like, Rose knows all the counter arguments to her positions, right? Like, there's no way she doesn't at this point, right? So like, if she like knowingly spreads what any reasonable person would be able to determine is misinformation, and it ends up causing harm to other people, especially trans people, then yeah, I would call that pretty fucking transphobic.
So I'm not familiar with this like argument or this discourse that she might be about to expound on a little bit further, but like, what I'm sort of getting as a first impression off of this is that this is the turf position that, like, oh, these organizations and even the government now are saying like trans women are women, which is the same as saying 2 + 2 = 5. And in the Orwellian universe, like, that is it's basically like the facts are being rewritten in such a way that, like, if you try to say what you know to actually be true, which is 2 + 2 = 4, like, then you're going to get, you know, non-personed or whatever the phrase is from the novel.
You know what's actually amazing about this? You know what's actually amazing, if that's the analogy, is that like, people who are like TERFs or like people who are transphobic and spreading transphobic ideas are themselves the people who are actually trying to like redefine what is already accepted scientific authority, right? Like, the academic consensus, amazingly, surprise, is that trans women are women. And so when organizations say that and people get mad about it and tell them, oh no, you should actually say something else, people like Rose of Dawn, they are actually the people that Orwell was criticizing in that book. Amazing. Yeah. So that's the true irony of this, right? Is that I think that she authentically believes herself to be true, or I think that she authentically believes herself to be right. But like the fact of the matter is she's actually the person that she would be criticized, that this criticism, if it is meant to be taken to its logical conclusion, would be criticizing.
The left are not realizing that they're actually showing their cards too early as to how absurd they can really take all of this. We shouldn't be allowing this kind of changing of language to go without having a proper conversation on it, and that is kind of what we're seeing over the last couple of years. Words are changing their meanings from what we can all know and accept, and how even as a trans woman, I understand what the term woman is. I would not be a trans woman if I didn't, and I certainly would have nothing to transition to if the term woman had no meaning. I mean, do I have to point out to examples as to...
Wait a second. Blair said this exact same thing. Blair made this exact same argument before. I'm not sure if you're... I'm not... Like, I don't expect you to watch all of Blair's content. I have to watch a decent amount of it because it's part of what I do now. Rip me. But, like, the idea... Like, I want to focus in on the idea that, like, if you are making out the argument that in order to be trans, you have to have something to transition to, then that assumes that at some point you are able to transition, if you are a binary trans woman, that eventually you're able to transition to female. But if you're simultaneously saying that trans women cannot be female in like the biological sense that she defined, then it is literally impossible for trans women to be able to transition to female, right? So the question is like, transition to what, Rose? Like, if the point is that we have to be able to transition to something.
Do they just genuinely not call themselves women? Is there something deep inside them that really truly believes that they aren't women?
I think that's essentially what it is, right?
That is so sad.
I know. And the thing is, like, a lot of people, and I actually didn't get this when, because a while back, like, the smaller, transmed YouTuber, Transbra, he was one of my first debates, and actually, when he first came on, he made the caveat that, like, listen, I don't hate myself, I actually love myself a lot. I never brought up that point, I don't think. He just kind of brought it up preemptively, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I think it's making a lot more sense to me now, because, like, if you follow their ideology, like, to its logical conclusion, they have to basically conclude that they're not who they say they are, right? Rose of Dawn wouldn't be able to logically conclude that she's a woman, and Transbra wouldn't be able to logically conclude that he's a man, right? Like, that's the logical, like, if you follow the logic to where it leads, and you don't make any shortcuts or cut out any important parts in the middle, that's where it leads to, right? And yeah, I feel like taking on that, like, I feel like taking on both an unsubstantiated, unscientific worldview, and also one which perpetuates the idea that you're not who you make yourself out to be, despite your best efforts. That kind of sucks, you know? Like, it kind of sucks that despite how much Rose puts into her transition, she might never authentically see herself as a woman. That's kind of shitty, you know? I feel bad for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Although my pity is very limited because, you know, the rest of her content and what she's saying is demonstrably harmful to others. But in that sense, I have some sympathy.
Why it's absurd to say that anyone can be a woman if they simply say so. I mean, look at this guy. Like, this is someone who is now apparently a moderator of a lesbian group called Girls Love Travel.
Hi, ladies. I would like to introduce myself. I've been granted the honor of being counted with a great GLT Pride Mod team. I'm a transgender woman who's been chosen to not transition my appearance. It's a double-edged sword because I don't like to make waves, but I also love for people to accept me for who I am. It seems like whatever community I have, big red target painted on my back and the head. GLT has been an amazing support for me and has made me feel very loved and appreciated. I would like to give back to this amazing community of amazing women any way I can. As for me, I love anything travel related and girly, so please comment your favorite makeup travel tip. I love y'all so much. Honestly, that's pretty fucking brave. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like that's pretty goddamn brave. For binary trans people who don't like medically transition. Actually, you know, I'll give like a small discussion on this, right? The nature of like how gender is received in society, because mind you, like, gender presentation has changed a lot over the course of society, right? Like, there was once upon a time where, like, back in, you know, Europe, in, I believe it was like the 1700s, like, the stereotypical thing for men to do was to wear big frilly wigs and to wear big dresses and wear high heels and to present what would be counted today as like very feminine, right? And also, you know, obviously over in like Scotland, I believe, or Scotland or Ireland, kilts were a thing, right? Literally skirts for men, right? And like over the course of time, like gender expectations and gender roles change a lot, right? And this is the really hot take. This is mostly just like based in like how the idea that like gender is societally constructed, but like this is why I see a lot of what what Rose might call, I hate this term, but I can't think of a better term, trans activists do. This is like the importance of what those kinds of people might do, right? Is because like when you have people who expand the definition of what it means to belong to a certain group, whether it's man, woman, or something else, like that's done by normalizing the belief that there are certain traits or qualities which are required to become a part of that group, right? Like, for example, nowadays it's becoming more and more normal to be identified as a woman in society, for other people to treat you as for the average person to treat you as a woman in society, that you don't have to have, for example, a specific kind of voice, right? It's becoming less expected, right? Because it's, trans women are becoming more normalized, and there's an expression which is pretty common where trans women don't have like stereotypically feminine voices, and like people are just kind of accepting that, and the more that becomes normalized, the more the idea that like you don't need to have a deep voice to become a woman becomes normalized, right? And therefore, like, the expectation of what it means to be treated as a certain gender is broadened, right? And this is another example of that, right? Now, it's a pretty drastic example of it, but, like, fuck, for all the hate that they probably take in their average life, I mean, I have some respect for it. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Brave.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically my thoughts on it. I know that if Rose were to watch this afterwards, she wouldn't agree with that in the slightest. But I mean, like, that is based on, like, the societal construction of gender. I don't think, well, no, I would say that's not like a very contested subject, but then again, I feel like Rose would probably contest with that idea, so that's more for the audience.
And that person is a non-transitioning trans woman who is happy staying as a guy, but still wants to be referred to, what is it?
Happy staying as a guy. Great language. Definitely shows what you think of them.
As a female, and still wants to use female pronouns and loves all things girly, so it's therefore a woman. That's the kind of person, when we talk about the term woman not being open to everyone, we don't want people like that to be able to take advantage of it.
People like that. I love how she's like morally impugning by saying take advantage, right? Like she's literally like morally impugning this person who probably already deals with like a massive amount of shit in her day-to-day life. And also just like blatantly misgendering her and deciding that she doesn't like fit her arbitrary definition of what it means to be a woman. Yeah. I don't know. In this sense, she's a lot like Blair, because I've seen very similar stuff from them both. I mean, like, Rose is literally like a smaller Blair, right? Like, that's effectively like what she is, from what I understand. It's just like a wannabe Blair White, but British, which I think is worse. Sorry, Emma. I know that you are the one good Brit, but all the other ones are bad. So yeah.
And when I say about trans women being women, again.
Oh, wait, hold on. I have to did she just say that trans women aren't women? She stuttered there. Hold on, what did she actually say?
Wants to use female pronouns and loves all things girly, so it's therefore a woman. That's the kind of person, when we talk about the term woman not being open to everyone, we don't want people like that to be able to take advantage of it. And when I say about trans women being women,
I think I'm hearing that right. Are you hearing that right, Luxander? Like, did she say trans women are not women?
Yeah, I want to hear the end of the sentence.
Yeah, but holy shit.
Again, that I understand that there's a lot of trans women out there who completely understand biology and why we transition.
I mean, like, she clearly doesn't understand biology, but let's hear
what
she has to say.
There's just a full conflation between female and woman here.
Yeah, for sure.
But when you open these terms to mean absolutely nothing, you do allow abuse, and that is why there are a lot of people getting upset as to why they can't just identify as a woman anymore.
What kind of abuse is there?
Dude, no one is trying to stop you from identifying. Oh my god.
I know. No, literally, like, I think that this is a pretty common, and I think that I have to, like, I think that categorically I have to describe, like, Rosa Dawn as a TERF, because this is a pretty stereotypical TERF, like, argument, right? Like, essentially what she's arguing is that, like, by broadening the definition of what it means to be a woman, that there's somehow some danger or harm that would be caused to other women, as if there's like this scarcity of womanhood. There's only so much womanhood that exists in the world, and well, if you give out too much womanhood, well, then you run out of womanhood, and there can be no more women because we've run out of the womanhood currency, and that's just ridiculous, right? Like, there's no reason to not like there's no reason that we can't expand the definition of womanhood to include more people. Like there's no harm that can actually be elicited, and every time they try to elicit like some kind of harm that would be caused, the best they could do is vaguely like usually the argument that they go to is like vaguely gesturing at like bathrooms, which have themselves shown to like have no actual substantive support, like empirical support that would show that actually there are people who are like taking advantage of self-ID laws to be able to go in and harass other women, right? Like, and otherwise there's really nothing. You know? Like, they always try to, like, vaguely gesture at some kind of harm, and they can't actually point out what it is. Or if they try to, like, it falls apart under like, the barest amount of scrutiny. Yeah.
So the next thing that I want to talk about is kind of a new segment for Trans Stupid, where I'm coming across a lot of articles, say, like, from the Crazy Vault, where...
Oh my god. Alright, we'll listen for a little bit, but, like, clap, yeet all the turfs. Yeah, for real. Since we've already got like a pretty long segment, if it's something that we don't necessarily want to discuss, I might cut it off there because I think she's about to just go to like a different argument. And we've already like this segment is already pretty decently long because we stopped her basically like every other second because wow, there was a lot that we had to say. But we can listen for like a little bit. Unless, are you good to like tell me how you're feeling right now?
I can go probably maybe another 10 minutes. I got to check on my pot roast.
Okay, actually, you know what? It seemed well. Hold on. Let's just see what she's gonna be saying.
Where people have said some incredibly insane stuff in various editorials, and it goes under the radar.
Okay, I think that she's just going to be talking about other editorials, which I really don't care about talking about. So yeah, I don't know. Luxander, do you have any final thoughts on this amazing journey, this amazing experience that we've been on?
I did have like a thought that I had popping up a couple times just through her segment there, which is like not only is it like okay, mental health is as important as physical health, and like there is like a tangible mental harm to being like misgendered in the process of trying to get medical care. Like I changed my legal sex, but when I started at this clinic, they had me like tell them what my assigned sex was, and now it just says female on all my shit, and I fucking hate it so much. But also,
oh my God.
like women who have had full hysterectomies for whom that was like an extreme loss and like a blow to their sense of self as women also now have to live in a world where it's like being argued that intrinsically someone who has a cervix is a woman, and like the implication of that is like if you don't have a cervix then you're not a woman.
Yeah.
It's just like perpetuating harm and trauma on so many people for no goddamn reason.
Yeah. And that really is kind of the harm, right? I mean, like, this is the reason why I prefer using descriptive language, right? Because I mean, like, literally the only, like, the ideal purpose of using descriptive language is just because, like, you know, from an academic sense, it's just more accurate, right? But also, like, practically, it ends up causing just, like, so much less harm because, like, when you're talking about something as serious as, like, you know, influencing what language broader society uses, right? You can run into problems either in the medical community where you can cause like prospective medical harm to individuals because they weren't given appropriate like instructions, or, you know, it causes like other issues, or you run into situations like what you described where you're literally delegitimizing women who even Rose probably in most instances would describe as a woman, or maybe she doesn't. I don't know. Maybe she says that they're basically eunuchs at this point. I honestly cannot tell at this point. Maybe like that is an entirely real possibility. I mean, she doesn't believe that trans women are women. That's what she said in the clip. So I mean, like, shit, anything is possible at this point. But it's, I don't know. I feel like I'm not saying anything like overtly controversial here, right? Like I feel like I'm saying, like, we've been talking a lot, and I've certainly been, saying a lot in response to the things that Rose has been saying. But I don't feel like I'm saying anything that's like very controversial, and yet when it's placed against like someone who's saying something which is like so blatantly far out there, it feels controversial in comparison, right? But I mean, like, I don't know, I feel like this is like we're not coming from a place that's not like common sense, you know?
No, I agree. Like, I don't understand what the point is. Like, you could point at any other body part. Like, a person with tonsils needs to get checked out for tonsillitis.
Exactly.
But we're not like in there assigning identity labels based on whether or not you have a fucking body part. You know what I mean? Like, that's just because that particular body part is more normative for everyone to have. Like, it's not being unnecessarily gendered.
Yeah. No, and I agree. By the way, my chat just said Luxander is so fucking based, and it got 10 stars, which that's like the currency where you get on the starboard. I'm not sure if you're familiar in the Discord.
I'm not familiar, but I'm glad.
Yeah, it means that everyone thinks that you're pretty fucking based. So yeah, thanks for coming on. I love this fucking like the tag team kind of setup that we got going. You know, last week it was Chud Logic, this week it was with you. I mean, like I love this. It was great. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I really enjoy having conversations with you, so I can see this happening more regularly.
Yeah. All right. Hey, and that if it happens in the future, some more, then like fucking, I'm looking forward to it.
Hell yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you later. All right.
Later.
Bye.